The wind howled through the red rock canyons of the Salt River Valley like a ghost refusing to be buried. Dust devils spun across the cracked earth, and the sun bled orange across the horizon, but the girl stood motionless on the ridge, her black braids whipping like war banners. She was 16, barefoot in faded denim, and her voice cracked the silence like a rifle shot. "Why did you leave me, cowboy?" The question had been asked 100 times before, always to the empty air, always unanswered. Tonight, though, the valley answered back. A low rumble rolled up from the dry riverbed. Headlights pierced the dusk, two beams cutting through the gloom like the eyes of a wounded animal. A battered Ford pickup crested the rise, tires spitting gravel, and skidded to a stop 10 feet from where the girl stood. The driver's door creaked open, and a man stepped out, tall, sun-leathered, hat low over eyes the color of storm clouds. A silver star glinted on his chest, Pinal County Sheriff's deputy, retired. He carried no gun, only a paper grocery bag and a look that said he'd driven 300 miles to stand in this exact spot. The girl's name was Najoni Yazzie, though most folks just called her Apache Girl because that's what the cowboy had called her the first time he saw her riding bareback across the reservation. She didn't flinch as the man approached, but her fingers tightened around the turquoise pendant at her throat, the one he'd given her 3 years ago, the day he vanished without a word. "You grew," he said, voice rough as mesquite bark. "You left," she shot back. "No note. No call. Just gone. Like I was nothing." The cowboy, his name was Caleb McAllister, though she'd only ever called him Cowboy, set the grocery bag on the ground. Inside, a loaf of fry bread still warm from the oven, a jar of wild honey, and a Polaroid photograph of a little boy with Najoni's same fierce eyes. The boy was maybe 6, grinning gap-toothed beside a hospital bed. Najoni's breath hitched. "Who is he?" "Your brother," Caleb said. "The one you never met. The one I took to Phoenix when the cancer came back." The valley went still. Even the wind seemed to listen. 3 years earlier, Caleb had been drifting through Arizona on a promise to himself, one last summer before he hung up his spurs. He'd stopped at the San Carlos reservation to help fix a windmill for an elder who'd once saved his daddy's life in Korea. That's where he met Najoni, hauling water buckets twice her size, cursing in Apache when the handle snapped. She was 13, all elbows and defiance, but her laugh could start a wildfire. He stayed a month. Taught her to rope, to read the clouds, to whistle through a blade of grass. She taught him the names of every plant in the desert and how to say, "I see you," in Dine. When the elder died, Caleb inherited the old man's horse and a debt he couldn't repay. So he stayed longer. Became the cowboy who fixed fences, delivered groceries, sat with grandmothers while they beaded. Became the man Najoni waited for every sunset on the ridge. Then the call came from Phoenix Children's Hospital. A social worker's voice, thin as wire, "Mr. McAllister, we have a boy here. Says you're the only family he knows." The boy's name was Jonah. Mother gone to fentanyl. Father unknown. Only link, a crumpled photo in Jonah's pocket, Caleb, age 25, holding a toddler on his shoulders at the county fair. Caleb's nephew, blood he didn't know he had until the DNA test confirmed it. Stage 4 leukemia. 6 months, maybe less. Caleb made a choice in the dark of a hospital parking lot. If he told Najoni, she'd insist on coming. She'd leave school, leave her grandmother, leave the only home she'd ever known to sit vigil at a stranger's bedside. He couldn't let her sacrifice her future for his past. So he wrote the note he never sent, packed the truck before dawn, and drove west. Told himself the girl was better off hating a ghost than loving a man who might not come back. Now, 3 years later, the cancer was in remission, Jonah was cancer-free and horse-crazy, and Caleb had come home to beg forgiveness he wasn't sure he deserved. Najoni stared at the photograph until her eyes burned. "You could have called. Cell service dies 20 miles out." And I was ashamed. Caleb's voice cracked. "Thought if I disappeared clean, you'd forget me." Move on. Be a kid. I'm Apache, she said. We don't forget. We carry. He nodded, throat working. I know. Silence stretched between them, thick as monsoon clouds. Then Nijoni did something unexpected. She stepped forward, pressed her forehead to his chest like she used to when nightmares came, and whispered, "You smell like pine and regret." Caleb's arms came up slow, like he was afraid she'd vanish. When she didn't, he held her tight enough to crack ribs. The grocery bag tipped, fry bread rolled into the dust. Neither moved to save it. Behind them, the truck door opened again. A small voice piped up, "Is this the valley with the magic horses?" Jonah stood on the running board, skinny legs in two big boots, eyes wide as supper plates. He clutched a stuffed Appaloosa missing one eye. Nijoni pulled back, wiped her face on her sleeve, and studied the boy who shared her blood through a man who wasn't blood at all. "Hey, little man," she said. "You ride?" Jonah shook his head. "Uncle Caleb says I gotta get stronger first." "Uncle Caleb's full of horse shit," Nijoni declared, and Caleb choked on a laugh that sounded like crying. She held out a hand. "Come on. I'll teach you." They walked to the ridge where the wild horses gathered at dusk, paint mares and iron-gray stallions moving like smoke against the cliffs. Nijoni whistled low, a sound older than words. A chestnut gelding with a white blaze trotted over, ears pricked. She vaulted onto his back bareback, reached down, and pulled Jonah up behind her. The boy's arms circled her waist like he'd done it 1,000 times. Caleb watched from below, hat in his hands, heart in his throat. The girl who'd once been all sharp edges now guided the horse in slow circles, murmuring in dying, teaching Jonah to feel the rhythm of hoofbeats like a second heartbeat. When the gelding bucked playfully, Jonah squealed, not in fear, but delight. Nijoni's laughter rang out, bright as bells, and something inside Caleb unclenched for the first time in 3 years. Later, around a campfire built from mesquite and regret, they ate fry bread toasted over coals and honey straight from the jar. Jonah fell asleep against Caleb's shoulder, sticky fingers tangled in the deputy's shirt. Nijoni poked the fire with a stick, sparks rising like tiny prayers. "You gonna leave again?" she asked, not looking up. "Only if you tell me to." She considered this. Grandma's got an extra Hogan. Roof leaks, but the stars come in. Jonah could learn to rope. "You could, stay." Caleb swallowed hard. "I ain't got much. Truck's on its last leg. Savings went to medical bills. We got horses. And I make jewelry sells at the trading post. Ain't fancy, but it's ours." She finally met his eyes. "Family ain't about blood, cowboy. It's about who shows up." The next morning, they loaded the truck with Nijoni's beadwork, Jonah's stuffed horse, and Caleb's old saddle. The drive to the reservation took 2 hours, but it felt like crossing a lifetime. Grandma Yazzie waited on the porch of the small adobe house, arms crossed, face carved from the same rock as the superstitions. She took one look at Jonah, his gap-toothed grin, his too thin wrists, and opened her arms. The boy ran to her like he'd known her forever. That afternoon, Nijoni and Jonah rode double to the river, searching for the perfect skipping stones. Caleb stayed behind to fix the leaking roof, hammering tin under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. When the girls, because that's what Jonah called Nijoni now, my sister, returned at sunset, their pockets bulged with agates and their laughter echoed off the canyon walls. Weeks turned to months. Caleb taught Jonah to read the brands on cattle, to gentle a spooked colt with nothing but breath and patience. Nijoni taught him Apache words for courage and constellations. Together, they built a corral from scrap lumber and dreams. The first time Jonah roped the dummy steer, awkward, triumphant, tears streaking dust on his cheeks, Nijoni hooped so loud the horses spooked. One night, after Jonah was asleep in the loft they'd built together, Nijoni found Caleb on the porch staring at the Milky Way. She carried 2 mugs of coffee strong enough to wake the dead.